And as you had mentioned, voters in 2013 approved that bond issue to pay for the new schools. And also in May, I believe they approved a 3.9 mil operating levy too. What's the school district doing, or what more can the school district do to try and extend the time period before you have to go back to the voters to ask for more money?
Well, it's a combination of really balancing the resources and the revenues. And the school board, the administration works very hard in negotiating with the teachers, for instance, in purchasing contracts to make sure that we're getting the highest value. In the side of the teachers, we want them to be respected and have the highest value for what they do and want to be part of the Lakewood community. So it really is that careful balance that every business and every household goes through of managing resources, what's coming in, what's going out, and getting the greatest bang for the buck. I can tell you, when I sit in the board meetings, when I hear reports from the treasurer and the other aspects of the school system, I am always very impressed with the level of diligence that goes into purchases, simple purchases, complicated purchases, and negotiations.
Okay. And Megan George.
Yeah. I think historically, Lakewood, the city of Lakewood, has always done a nice job in supporting our students. I think we've passed, numerous levies. The community has always supported our school system, and I think that's why we have such a strong school system today. But I agree. In order to, keep another levy off the books, if you will, is looking at contracts. You want to hire the best, the brightest, and look at where we're spending our money on both top-notch educators, but also top-notch administrators who can be at the schools.
Okay. And Christine Pegziwan.
Yes, thank you. So we know funding for our schools isn't fair in the state of Ohio. The funding formula is unconstitutional, which forces us to go back to our voters every several years to fund our schools. That's a reality. And I think what we really need to look at and be assured that we're doing, because when people give us their taxes and trust us with their money, we need to balance that with some of the things I've heard already. What are our resources? What are our costs? But we also need to make sure that our spending reflects our values. And so I think there's a delicate balance that we are meeting the standards, providing what we need to, while reflecting what is cherished and treasured, but also really prepares our kids for the global market they're going to go into, such as our music program, which is a gem here in Lakewood and is experiencing some difficulty. So we need to be good stewards. We need to make sure we're meeting the state standards at the same time that we are reflecting Lakewood values in our budgets.
Okay. And Emma Petrie-Barcelona.
So I'm glad that Ms. Pegziwan brought up that the state has a lot to do with school funding here in Lakewood. We as taxpayers, of course, are footing the bill for public education, and it's based on where we live and our house values. And so we do have to be, as a board, and a district, very mindful of the fact that people are sharing their resources and what we need to do with these resources. So with regard to the state, at least, that has been, over the past few years, an increasingly challenging situation, such that they are changing formulas and changing how they fund public education every 2 years. There was some predictability in the past. That's gone. And so now we are fortunate to have not only a very talented treasurer, but also fiscal staff on the schools who can help make sure that we're ahead of the game, that we can plan our future in appropriate and meaningful ways, and that we have a better understanding of where we are right now. I think overall it's the big picture of managing where we are. We're reimbursed from the state based on the number of students in our district, and our school district has been getting smaller the past few years, about 100 students a year. So those are resources that are going down, and that we do have to manage what we have and where the resources are going very appropriately. And I think in light of that, and along with the tax resources, that we've been doing a very good job the past few years.
Okay, and Mr. Kaleri.
Thank you. Our community has been incredibly generous in giving us 2 levies over the last 5 years. Where we've struggled as a school board and struggled as a group is providing the leadership needed. to better maintain our cost structure and not have to keep going back to our cities. Our forecast currently calls for us to be short somewhere between $14 and $20 million over the next 4 to 5 years, which means we're going to have to come back to the taxpayers in the next 2 years for another levy. I'll tell you, I was in an audit meeting last week, and the state is not cutting our funding. It's actually flat for the next 2 years, is the numbers we got back from our treasurer. Our problem is all around our cost and how we need to go about controlling that cost. I'll give you an example. I sit on the city's audit committee, and we've been able to keep the city's insurance growth in premiums and costs to about 4% over the last 6 years, while the schools have seen their insurance rise over 12%. If we had been able to maintain and do what the city had done, we would have over $5 million extra that we could use to better serve our schools and our students. I can also tell you that in the audit committee, because of my skills in finance and my knowledge and experience, while we were going through a review of the budget, I found 4 different places that we could come up with the money to replace the teacher that was cut in the music program. So it's not a case of people not wanting to do it, it's a case of making sure we have people with the right skill sets, experience, and knowledge to find what we need to better serve our people so we don't have to come back for another levy in 2 years.
Okay, and I think everyone has had an opportunity with this, but are there any follow-up comments?
If I may,
Sure.
I would just like to note that the Lakewood City Schools are part of a consortium for healthcare. So we're pooling risk, which is actually the smartest thing to do where the city is self-insured. So I just would note that we are part of a consortium and people are constantly looking at that with regard to healthcare and those costs. So I just want to say, and the only other note I would say with regard to music is just to be sure that indeed there are still the same number of music teachers as there were last year. Indeed, one position moved from full-time to half-time, and that is a direct result primarily of the fact that we have fewer students in the schools, and every department in the school district has fewer teachers than they did, say, 5 or even 10 years ago.
And I would add that all music programs are in place as they have been.
Okay.
The music programs
I could like to
are
comment to
not.
that.
Go
Okay.
ahead. I'll let
Okay.
you go first.
The
Thank
music
you.
program is intact in regard to, for example, let me just point out the middle schools, where a student comes in, if they want to be in choir or play an instrument, they have to choose. That was one of the reasons why the enrollment started to go down. Also last year, they made kids choose between music and math classes. But that aside, we have been dismantling over the years, and so many of those programs that we used to have that were standard during the day became extracurriculars. And so that's the way we were serving children. Those extracurriculars are in place. However, now we are not paying those teachers a stipend. Those teachers are working free to provide those extracurriculars. It is my opinion that we should not be in the business of allowing professional licensed teachers teach for free. They should be paid for the work they do because they are essentially providing programs that were not being provided during the day.
Am I allowed to respond?
I can't recall, did you respond earlier? Or?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, sir. I want to go back to 2 things. One, on the insurance. We do belong to a consortium, but the consortium has not been doing a good job of keeping our costs down. So while we've managed to spread our risk, financially, we could have $5 million extra dollars to us if we did a better job of going outside and finding a way to maintain or follow what the natural curve is, rather than what's happening now, which is our costs are rising and rising despite being in the consortium. And at a time when $50,000 is a teacher, we can't be throwing $5 million away. And as for the music program, I agree with Christine. My kids are in the schools. We're seeing less and less opportunities. And you can call a half-time teacher a full-time teacher, but at the end of the day, we cut the availability to instruction for our kids. And if you're doing that, you're eating your feed corn. And down the road, we're going to struggle. And this is the #1 priority of our community, is our music program. It's what we're known for, and it's what we should be supporting. And as I said, in the audit meeting, I found 4 places, no problems, to refund that position.
Okay.